Chapter 5. The River. This is what a dead village smells like, I think. We drive through slowly. There are black birds in the sky here, too. They know that there are bodies here. They want to eat the bodies. Once, one of our cows died in the night. In the morning, these birds came and started to eat the cow. They can smell it. The village smells worse than a dead cow. Perhaps all my country smells like this now. The men who do these things must be very bad. I can see the river through the trees. We are driving along by the river. I like the river. It's a very big river, and it goes very fast. I often walked along it with my brother. He said that you can't swim in it, and if you fall in the river, in 2 hours you'll be in another country. He told me not to forget that. I could see how fast it was. I put a piece of wood in the river once, and whoosh, it was gone. I ran along the side of the river, but the piece of wood was faster than me. It was always quiet near the river. There were trees which looked as if they were talking to the water. The river was a lot of different colours. When it rained, the river was green and grey and silver, like the fish that swam in it. On sunny days, the river had lots of little gold bits in it. They danced on top of the water as if they were happy that it was a sunny day. Last month, my father and I walked along the river. There was a farmer he wanted to see in another village, and he said that because it was the school holidays, I could go with him. I was very happy. I liked going for walks with my father. My father often talked to me on these walks. He told me what he was thinking. "It's too dry," he said, or "It's too wet." It was nearly always too dry or too wet. There was always too much rain or not enough rain. When there was too much rain, there were lots of weeds in the fields. My father told me that weeds were green plants that were in the wrong place. They made my father angry. He hated the weeds. And I hated the weeds because it was my job to go into the fields after school and pull them out of the ground. When there was not enough rain, the fields went yellow and then brown, and the ground was hard like the walls of our house. Then all the plants died. My father and I walked along the river to a place where there were lots of stones. "There was a farm here once," said my father. "What happened?" I asked him. "The people from across the river came," my father told me. "They took all the animals and then made a big fire, and now there's nothing, just stones and weeds." "What about the people?" I asked my father. He didn't tell me. I know now why he didn't tell me. It was because the people on that other farm were dead. My father didn't want me to know things like that. I can understand that now, because I know what happens when the men come. "There's the river," I say to Chris, as we see it again through the trees. "It looks different here. It's the same river as the river near my village, but it's not the same. I think of my mother's face after the men came. It was the same, but not the same. I don't want to think about that." "Do you know any stories?" I ask Chris. "Oh yes, lots of stories," he says. "What's your favourite story?" I ask him. "It's about some animals who live near a river," he tells me. "I'll tell you the story. It begins with a little black mole. The mole lives under the ground." "That's good," I say. "You're safe under the ground." Chris tells me the story. It's about a toad who lives in a big house. One day when he's out, bad animals come into his house and take it away from him. Do the soldiers with blue hats come and help the toad? I ask Chris. No, I don't think so, says Chris. I think that the rat and the mole tell the bad animals to go away. Do they go away? I ask him. Yes, he says. If the soldiers with blue hats ask the bad men to go away, will they go away? I ask. I don't know, Jojo, says Chris. I'll tell you another story, he says. He tells me about his house in England. He lives in a town called Oxford, where there's a big university, and everyone rides bicycles. Can I come and live with you in Oxford? I ask him. No, says Chris. I'm sorry, Jojo, but I'm not at home very often. I'm always travelling. I never stay anywhere for very long. Today I'm here, but tomorrow I don't know where I'll be. I'll just be somewhere looking for new stories. But you said that your newspaper wanted my story, I say. They do, says Chris. They'll love your story, but they want new and different stories every day. I thought you were my friend, I say. I don't want Chris to go. I am, he says, and I'll write to you and I'll come and see you again, and I'll tell you more stories. But I don't want to listen to his stories anymore. I can see lights a long way away, and I can hear the guns. I'm afraid again. Don't be afraid, says Chris. The fighting is a long way from here now. You're safe with us. The soldiers are just behind us. I look around and see the lorry with the soldiers behind us. It's night now, and I'm very tired. The road is very dark. It goes ahead of us like a river through the trees. Like a dark river. Chapter 6. The Children's House. It's morning when we get to the children's house. I'm asleep, and Chris wakes me. I get out of the jeep with Dog and Whitetail, and lots of children run up to see who I am. When they see Whitetail, they laugh. Is that your supper? One of the boys asks me. I have Whitetail very close to me and move back to the jeep. Don't worry, says a woman who comes out of the house. No one's going to eat your chicken. I'm Dr. Nicky, she says. There are so many children here. They come from many villages, and all of them have stories like mine. That's why they're here. They don't have homes. This is your new home, Chris tells me. You'll be fine here. He says that he knows Dr. Nicky. He met her before in another country. He says that she is very kind and she will look after me. Aren't you staying? I ask him. No, Jojo, he says. I'm going to take photos of the fighting. It's my job, but I'll come back as soon as I can. Goodbye, Jojo, he says, and then he drives away very quickly. Dr. Nicky shows me round the children's house. But it isn't just one house. There are many houses where people sleep and eat. And there's a big hospital for all the children who are hurt. There are lots of children here who are hurt. The house where I sleep is bigger than any house in my village. We all sleep in one big long room. Days go by, and other children come here. We all do lessons together, and we play football. Dog likes football too, but he always tries to eat the ball. It makes the small children laugh. The very small children are happy here because they don't understand what is happening in our country. All the other children are unhappy. I know that because they shout and cry in the night. No one sleeps quietly here. Dr. Nicky is the doctor here. She speaks our language very well and is very nice. She wears a white t-shirt with letters on it. What are the letters for? I ask her. The letters are for Médecins Sans Frontières. That means Doctors Without Borders, she answers. I don't understand. My brother had a t-shirt with letters on it. Letters were the name of our country. Is that where you come from? I ask. I know that some countries are very big. I think that maybe her country is so big that it doesn't have any borders. Maybe it just has sea all around it. A land without borders is a good place, I tell her. You can be safe, and you won't be afraid of the people who live on the other side of the river. I want to go to the country without borders, I tell her. Dr. Nicky smiles. No, Jojo, she tells me. It just means that I'm a doctor who will go anywhere. I will help people in any country. Not the country on the other side of the river, I say. You can't help them. They are very bad. But there are children there too, says Dr. Nicky. They aren't bad. I will go anywhere where there are children who need me. But I don't want to listen. I like Dr. Nicky. She has lots of children to look after, but she often talks to me. Many of the children are very ill. Some of the children are here because the men thought that they were dead, but they weren't dead. There is one boy here who says nothing. No one knows his name or where he comes from. We call him Red because he has a red t-shirt. Dr. Nicky asks me to talk to Red. I say, okay, but I don't really want to talk to him. Well, I do want to talk to Red because Dr. Nicky wants me to, but I don't want Red to tell me what he saw. I'm afraid. I don't want to hear the things that are in his head. I think he's seen some very bad things. I think perhaps he was in his house when the men came. There are some things that make you want to stop talking, I tell Dr. Nicky. I know, Jojo, she says, but Red doesn't have to tell us what he saw. I just need to know his name and where he comes from. I need to know if he has a family somewhere. I'll talk to him, I say. So many quiet children, and Jojo who never stops talking, says Dr. Nicky. But she smiles at me, and I know she likes me. I go outside, and Dog follows me. Red isn't afraid of Dog, but he's afraid of people. I sit outside and talk to Red. I talk about my family, tell him stories. I tell him a story about when my mother had a new dress and how it got wet in the rain. She put it near the fire to dry, and a bit of wood fell out of the fire and burned it. Then I tell Red a story about the time my brother went into the fields with the goats, but he started to read a book, and the goats ran away. I had a goat, Red says. Did your goat have a name? I ask him. Red closes his eyes. Our goats all had names, I tell him, but then I stop. I don't want to think about our goats. The men took them away. My goat was... Red begins, but he never says what his goat was. He never says any other words, only those words about the goat. I run to Dr. Nicky. Red told me he had a goat, I tell her. Well done, Jojo, says Dr. Nicky. That's a start. But it wasn't. It was the end. The next day Red walked out of the children's house. He walked down the road between the trees. Maybe he wanted to go home. Maybe he just wanted to go away. I don't know. But I never saw him again. After he left, Dr. Nicky looked very sad. But then she went back inside the hospital. There are so many sick children, Some of the children here say that Red stepped on a landmine after he left the children's house. There are lots of children here who have stepped on landmines. Most of them don't have any legs. Men have put landmines into fields and under the roads, all the places that children go. I didn't know about landmines, but the other children tell me about them. Landmines sit in the ground, and when you stand on them, bang, you die, or you get very badly hurt. Often you lose your legs. Dr. Nicky says that there are thousands and thousands of landmines in our country. When the fighting stops, there will be landmines there, so children will be hurt. I think about this at night. I also think that the fighting is getting closer. You can hear the guns and also bombs. They're louder than the guns. At night, I think of my home. It's a very long way away. I'm afraid of the bombs and the guns and the sounds they make. I don't want the fighting to come here. I want Chris to be here. I feel safe with him. Chapter 7. Chris. Chris is here again. He came early this morning. He was wearing the same clothes and looked very dirty. But one of the women here has washed his clothes, and now he looks clean again. Chris takes lots of photos of all of us in the children's house and in the hospital. The soldiers are here again too. They don't live at the children's house, but some of them come and play football with us. Duck likes playing football. He says that he often plays football at home. Duck tells me that he and the other soldiers come from a place called Ireland. It's near England, and it's very green. There are lots of fields and lots of chickens and ducks. He says that all the soldiers call him Duck now, and it's all because of Whitetail and me. Whitetail likes Duck. Duck picks her up, and she clucks very happily. When the other soldiers are here with Duck, they sometimes laugh at him. They shout Duck's name, and then they all laugh. Chris tells me that duck means two things in English. One is the bird that lives in the water. The other is when you get down on the ground, when someone shoots a gun at you. So the soldiers shout, "Duck!" and fall on the ground, and then they laugh. They play games like me and my brother. I didn't know that soldiers were like this. Are the soldiers going to fight the bad men across the river? I asked Chris. No, says Chris. They aren't here to fight. They have come here to try and make the country safe, says Chris. They are United Nations soldiers. They will fight only if someone tries to hurt them. The soldiers come from different countries, and they go to other countries to stop people fighting. I don't understand. Chris says that the United Nations means that lots of countries get together, like my father did with the other men in the village. They decide all the things that are good and bad, and what the other countries have to do. If the other countries don't do them, then they send their soldiers. He says that the United Nations is called the UN. That's what is written on the side of their lorries. But the fighting will stop if the soldiers kill the bad men, I say. Then everything will be better. It's not as easy as that, Jojo, says Chris. Why didn't the soldiers come here before? I ask Chris. Why didn't they come here when the bad men first crossed the river? Before my family died? Before the fires? I think I don't like the soldiers so much now. It takes a long time to get the soldiers ready, says Chris. And it's never easy to send men a long way. The important thing now is to stop the fighting. There are villages like yours on the other side of the river too, and children. But I don't believe him. Chris comes and talks to me every day now. He's teaching me to speak English. He says I'm very intelligent. "What lessons do you like at school?" Chris asks me. "I like reading," I answer. "I'm reading the 2 books the soldiers found in my old school. They're a bit black from the fire, but you can read some of the pages. When I build a new school for the village, I'll use these books," I tell Chris. "When you build your new school, I'll get new books for you," says Chris. "I'll ask the people who read our newspaper to give money for the books and for the school." But Chris looks sad, and I know what he is thinking. He thinks I am a child, and I don't understand, but I do understand. He thinks that there is no one back in the village, so there will never be a school there again. "There are people from the village who live in the big town," I tell Chris. "They'll come back with their children one day, and we'll build the village again." I remember all the sounds of the village, people laughing and working and talking. The people must go back. I must go back. When you leave your village, it's like walking into a big hole. You fall, and you don't stop falling. And if the village is empty, who will talk to the ghosts? There are many empty villages in my country, and many ghosts. The soldiers have made a big hole in the ground, and Dr. Nicky makes us hide in it when the sound of the bombs is very loud. All the small children cry. I want to leave here. I want to go somewhere where there are no bombs and no men with guns. Chris has been here for 2 weeks, and now he says that he's going away. Not just to another village, but back to England. He comes to say goodbye to me. "Please take me home with you to Oxford," I ask him. "I don't mind if you're not there all the time. I'll study, and then I'll make money. I'll make lots of money and come back and build my village again." "I'm sorry, Jojo," says Chris, "but I can't take you back to England." "Why not? I'm very small. I don't eat very much." "It's not that. This is your country. This is where you live. I can't." He turns away from me. "I will try and come back soon," he says, "and I will write to you, Jojo." And he goes. I don't want his letters. I want him to take me away. I don't like it here anymore. Chapter 8. I Knew Your Brother. It's 2 weeks since Chris went away. The fighting is getting nearer. We hear the guns every day now. And there are planes in the sky. They go round and round like the black birds above my village. When the planes come, we all get into the hole in the ground. Everyone is afraid of the planes. They have bombs. Dr. Nicky says that the roof of our house is white with a big red cross. That shows the men in the planes that this is a hospital. But 3 days ago, a bomb fell into the trees near the house where all the clothes are washed. Now it's not safe to go inside there, and the women have to wash the clothes outside. Dr. Nicky's angry. Many of the children can't go anywhere because they are too sick. Every day when the planes come, we have to hide in the hole. It's very hot there, and my head hurts with the sound of the guns and the small children crying. The sound of the guns goes on all night. It's like the sound of all the trees falling down. It makes my ears hurt. It makes my head hurt. Then, very early this morning, the gun stopped. We went back to our beds and went to sleep. Today, when I wake up, there are lots of men here. They are our soldiers. They look very tired. Some of them don't have any boots, and they don't have very much food. They take some of the food that the UN soldiers gave us. The older boys are very noisy. They talk to the soldiers. Then the soldiers come and talk to all of us. They tell us that we must get bigger quickly, so that we can be soldiers like them and fight for our country. One of the soldiers comes up to me. "I think I know you," he says. "Aren't you Jojo, the brother of—" and he says my brother's name. "Yes," I tell him. I know who he is now. He was a friend of my brother's, and he came to our village and stayed with us. I'm very happy to see him. He knows my village, and when he talks to me as Jojo who lived in the village. With him, I am Jojo who had a brother. I understand now why I feel so strange in the children's house. It's because here, I am not really Jojo. When I left my village, I left some of myself there. I was like a snake. I didn't have my old skin, and I didn't have a new skin. My brother's friend asks about my brother. I tell him. I tell him that I am the only one left from our village. He is very angry. My brother was a good friend of his. He wants to kill the men who killed my brother. We talk. He tells me what our soldiers are doing. And now, talking to my brother's friend, I feel that I am someone again. I am Jojo, and I have a country. A country feels like a new skin. We talk about his village too. He says that it is like my village, but it's a long way from here, and there isn't any fighting. He says that he will take me there after the fighting is finished. He says that his family are very nice. They will be kind to me. They knew my brother too. I like him. He says that he and the other soldiers have walked for 2 days without stopping. They are very tired. After we talk, he sleeps on the ground. I look at his boots. They have holes in them. His gun is old, too. It's a small gun. It's not like the big new guns the UN soldiers have. They have new boots, too. And they aren't fighting. Outside the children's house, some of the UN soldiers are playing football with the older boys. I see Duck, and he smiles at me. Dog is trying to play football, too. I sit and watch them for a while. Dog runs after the ball and catches it in his mouth. Then he runs away. Everyone runs after him. I am sitting by the wall, and Duck's gun and boots are next to me. There is no one here to see me. Very quickly, I pick up the big gun and the boots. They're very heavy. I take them to my brother's friend and wake him up. My brother's friend is very happy when I give him the gun and the boots. He gives me his old gun because he says that I will need it. He says that our soldiers are going to hide in the hills, and I can go with him. You can't stay here now, Jojo, he says. They'll be looking for you when they find that the gun has gone. I take his old gun. It's not very heavy. I follow him, my brother's friend. He talks to one of the other soldiers who came with him, and then he goes through the house and out of the door at the back. There are trees near there, and very soon no one can see us. I think of Chris as I go. His letters will go to the children's house, but I won't be there. I was a boy when I met Chris. That was then. Now I have a gun, and I'm a man.